Welcome to The Disciplined Life. I'm Aria.
And I'm Coda.
We use our experience as a married couple living in a domestic discipline marriage to talk about the ups and downs of implementing authority structure and domestic discipline into modern relationships.
Let's do it. Hello, everyone.
Hey guys, on today's podcast, we are going to be talking about breaking bad habits and how to support your take-it-in-hand partner in the process of breaking bad habits and what that entails. So before we get started, if you are not already, please subscribe. If you want to support the channel, a link to our Patreon is down below. But of course, you can always like this video, give it a comment. That really does help the channel a lot. So without further ado, let's get into the topic.
Let's do it. So today's topic, we're talking about something that everybody runs from, habits. We don't want to hear about habits because especially that the first thing that comes to mind for all of us is our bad habits. And habits always link to whether or not you're consistent. That's really what a habit is. Are you consistent in something that you are doing? And as the head of household, it's your job to help your partner be consistent on top of everything that you're doing to try to be consistent. So it presents its own form of challenges because you're not only having to think about your things, but hers. But it is very, very important that you tackle this, first of all, with the utmost care. One of the things that I see happening that can be a problem in a relationship is, okay, I'm going to tackle this habit that I want changed head on. And I'm one of those people that if I don't approach that the right way, it can actually backfire on me. There's been many, many times, and Aria can probably tell you, that I've approached a habit that I want her to be more consistent in, maybe not in the kindest of ways. And so the first important thing in developing consistency is to bring this to your partner with gentleness and kindness.
I think one of the first challenges with approaching changing habits is first acknowledging that you have a bad habit.
That's good. Yep.
I know for myself, it's really hard to kind of step back and acknowledge that I have habits that aren't beneficial to our goals or that are downright detrimental to our goals. And so really first acknowledging that you have a habit that needs to be changed is the first challenge towards being able to make a plan to change that habit and accept the accountability.
And that goes hand in hand. She's absolutely right. That goes hand in hand with what we're talking about with gentleness and kindness. Because this also could be a habit, potentially, that your partner is not aware of, number one, that needs to be changed. Or number two, it is a touchy subject. So in order to bring that to their attention or make them aware that it's a habit that they need to change, gentleness and kindness is the first thing to do. And when I say gentleness and kindness, I mean, please approach that. Hopefully it's something that you genuinely care about. Like you want them to change it. If it's not a habit that you care for them to change about, you're coming from it from the wrong angle. And maybe that's not a habit right now that you need to tackle because you only want to come to your partner with a habit that you're absolutely certain and that you feel convicted or passionate about them changing for their benefit. That's where you always need to come from, is a changing for their benefit. And I think that would be more effective than maybe coming from a selfish point of view that you think they need to change that before for your benefit.
Well, for their benefit, but also the benefit of the family unit,
The relationship,
home, the relationship, all of those things. You really want to look at things that are really impeding the pillars of your relationship. We've talked about setting up core pillars of your relationship and talking about those things that are really important for you. And also, you don't want habits that are going to undermine the goals that you've set in accordance with those pillars. So that's really what you want to come at this with is there a habit that's standing in the way of you and your goals as a couple and in your relationship.
That's really good. That's really good. And so then after you approach that habit and you're both in agreement that that is a habit that you need more consistency in, or that you need to change to have more consistency, the next thing that I would say is you need to have a plan on how to execute that. And what I mean by executing it is not only how you're going to go about forming that new habit, but what are the consequences? That's the most important thing. When we've established habits that I want Aria to get in our relationship, we've talked a lot about, first of all, what should the consequences be for that habit? Because you don't want them to necessarily be too severe, depending on the habit you're trying to develop. But you also don't want the consequences to be to a point where it's very light and she's, nah, it's okay. I don't care if I form this habit because the consequences aren't that severe. And you want to be, so you want to try to decide what the best consequences are for that habit. But in addition, you want to make sure you're in agreement on that as well. Really agree on what that habit's going to be and what the consequences are going to be.
Well, and also when thinking about the consequences, what's appropriate for the habit, but also what's appropriate for your partner.
Yes, yes, very good. Because, as we've said many times on this podcast, not every relationship is going to look and act exactly the same. So what may work for Aria and I in terms of consequences for her, depending on the habit that we're trying to form for her, may be totally different in your relationship. And so that goes back to that communication piece that we've always talked about in a domestic discipline relationship. Be communicating and be very, very clear on what the rules are and what the consequences are. Now, this may be something that you also want to put into trying to make a consistent habit, and that's rewards. We've
gone back and
gone
forth.
back. I was going to say we've gone back and forth with that, haven't we?
And I know a lot of couples that we've talked to have also kind of gone back and forth on the concept of rewards. Where we have landed and where a lot of couples that we've talked to have landed is rewards are given within our relationship are given more spontaneously. They are given as Coda sees that I need that reinforcement, that positive reinforcement for my effort. It's not something that we qualify with a certain amount of achievement anymore, because that didn't feel genuine to where we were and how we functioned as a couple. Having those rewards be qualified by a certain achievement or a certain amount of effort, that didn't actually help form those goals and form those habits in a tangible way. It felt more authentic for us to have rewards be spontaneous, but they do still exist.
Yes. Well, and what she was referring to is that, for some couples, it may be good for you to have rewards for forming this new habit. For Aria and I, yes, it did feel like it was, well, you achieved this, so here you go. This is what was written down. Here you go. She is somebody, though, that would like to just be rewarded again spontaneously and acknowledge that I realize that she has done the hard work, that she's done all of those things. And so I think she kind of prefers it that way.
And that's why it feels more meaningful to me. However, the habits that we have worked on, that makes sense for those habits. Now, if we were trying to establish a habit around, a savings goal, it might make sense to have a more achievement-based reward system where it's like, okay, if you hit this amount in your savings goal, then you get to have something out of the ordinary. That would make more sense, but that's not one of the goals that we've ever worked on. So for us, for the goals that we're working on, for how we function as a couple, the spontaneous rewards are really much better for us.
And even at that, if you have you can be spontaneous, even setting goals like that. But as Aria said, for us, we need a little bit more structure in goals like that. And so it just depends on what your habits you're trying to form and what those goals are and how that's going to affect your relationship.
I think the most important aspect, though, is don't neglect the positive reinforcement.
Yes.
Definitely structure that in, because if negative consequences is the only reinforcement for habit building that you have, it's going to be a lot more difficult to build and solidify those habits.
Positive reinforcement really does help. So after you have discussed with gentle and kindness, what that goal is, or that new habit is that you want to conform and have the consistency, and you've talked about rewards and you've talked about consequences, the next part is a very difficult part, and that is to finally implement the habit that you want to achieve, the habit that you want your partner to start doing consistently.
Executing the plan.
Now, I recommend, and this is just off of knowledge that I've acquired from people who have talked about forming new consistent habits, that you try to do that sometime at what you consider the beginning of your week. And the reason is that a lot of research has shown that if you start a habit consistently at the beginning of your week, you're more likely to succeed, and your partner is more likely to succeed if you do that, as opposed to if you start that the middle of the week, and especially the end of the week when you're both really, really tired, and the week, especially if it's a habit that really unraveled that week, you don't want to start it at the end of the week.
However, don't let that mindset become a paralysis to put off starting a habit. Or if you try starting a habit on a Monday, for instance, and things don't go well, don't just put off trying again until the next Monday. Like, don't let that become a paralysis. If you're the type of person that makes excuses, I guess, for lack of a better word, to put things off, it might just, if you're motivated to start something, it might just be better just to go ahead and start when you have that motivation.
And that's true. And so again, there are always exceptions to the rule, but if you found that when you've started habits, you've had a hard time developing consistency, see if that happened to be one of the issues, that maybe you didn't start it at the right time. For us, it's worked to, when we've discussed forming a new habit or to get more consistent in something, to say, hey, let's take the weekend. We've already talked about it, but let's take the weekend and then we'll start fresh on Monday morning with this new habit, with the new consequences and everything else.
Part of that is I really like to take that time to prepare to start a new habit. So if I have for instance, we've talked about my bedtime a lot on the podcast, but if we have a goal to change my bedtime to an earlier time, then I like to take a few days to get completely caught up on the housework, start implementing some routines around my bedtime, so that when we get to the point of actually changing that bedtime, I feel a little bit more prepared for that process. It helps my mental preparation to have a few days to kind of prepare.
Which is why we suggest starting on Monday, because it gives you the weekend to prepare to do that. But again, take Aria's advice. If you're hot to trot on starting it right away, go ahead and do that. There are no one's going to penalize you for starting that habit early. It's just you really want to get a good running start with it out of the gate.
Set yourself up for success, right? And so, but I think the biggest component of success is having that consistency, and not only the consistency of effort, but the consistency of the reinforcement, both positive and negative. And so really, my job as a taken in hand partner, when my head of household implements a change in habit or routine or schedule, my job is to give that consistent effort, but his job really is to check in and evaluate if that habit is being performed, give positive reinforcement when it's earned, but also give consequences and punishments when they are earned as well.
And that's exactly what I was going to say. The hardest part now for the head of households is, once you begin this habit, doing the positive reinforcement, but also the hardest part, if there is a violation, following through with that punishment. That is not easy, especially because if it's a brand new habit that you're trying to form, at least I'm the kind of person that is like, well, she did really good Monday and Tuesday. She just missed it on Wednesday. Give her a pass. Don't do that. Learn from my mistake and learn from my example. If you want the consistency, even if 5 days in a row she was on par with it, but off the sixth day, there's all different kinds of numbers you can see out there of how long it takes to form a certain habit. Whichever those numbers you believe, it doesn't really matter. but especially in the very, very beginning, even if she was having some good momentum and she tripped on day 6 and 7, there is forgiveness, but you need to follow through with that punishment because it's not going to do her any good to not follow through with that.
Because to me, and I can't speak for every taken in hand partner out there, but for me, it is a sense of security to know that I am being held accountable. Even if it was a mistake, even if I didn't mean it, even if I tripped up because this habit isn't solidified, or, I'm just not in the habit of doing whatever the change is. It brings me such a sense of security and comfort to know that he's looking out for me and he takes this seriously. Because even if I asked for this habit or whatever we're working on, even if I brought this to him, I need to know that he values it and he takes it seriously. And if he lets things slide, if he gives me a little bit of grace or a little bit of a pass, it communicates to me that he doesn't take it seriously and he doesn't take my improvement in this area seriously. And then it kind of undermines the core pillars of our relationship when he does that. And like I said, I can't speak for every taken in hand partner, but I know that that is not an uncommon experience.
And what she said was very, very important just now. You have to follow through with it so that she knows you're taking it seriously. I didn't realize in the beginning that when I would just let her slide here and there, that it was communicating that I wasn't taking our relationship seriously. I had no idea. I just thought, oh, she probably feels like, oh, that was really nice of him to let me off the hook because he realizes, I thought I was giving her a reward, right? That he realizes, oh, I've done 7 days in the row perfectly, but now, he's giving me a reward for those.
But why? Because what you just said makes no sense to me from the standpoint of even if I've done, 7-10 days in a row, but I slip up, why would you reward the failure?
Well, and that's exactly my point. I'm glad you brought this up because I was about to head right to it. But then when you really think about what I just said, rewarding her for doing the wrong thing, right? So then when you think about that, it didn't make any sense that I was letting 1 day slide. So again, learn from my example, my poor example, which is if they violate the rules, follow through with that. You will build trust, and she will realize that you are taking this habit just as serious as she is, if not more serious. And especially if it's a habit that she's had a hard time forming, but she really wants it to form, she wants you to take it more seriously than she is. That's the only way she's going to accomplish that goal.
You only really want to reward the behavior that you want to see repeated.
That's
and
exactly
so
right.
If you take the opportunity to say, oh, she slipped up, but she's been doing so well, I think I'll just let this one slide. You're rewarding the slip up. And if you reward the slip up, you will see more slip ups, more failure.
Yes, you will. And that's exactly right. That's what I saw happen. That's what I saw happen as the head of household when I did that.
So wait until the next success to give a reward is the point there.
Exactly. Especially the reward is going to feel so much better for her. Let's say that she's done this consistent habit for 21 days in a row and she only had 2 slip-ups within those 21 days. That she's going to feel really good when you do show up with a reward, because not only did you follow through with the consequences those 2 days of those 21 that she, she had stumbled on the habit, but she's going to say, wow, he recognized what I did do well, but followed through with the consequences. And that's going to make her want to do that habit more. And then eventually it will be a habit that will solidify itself. And hopefully it becomes exactly what a lot of our habits that we want to form are, which is second nature. You don't even have to think about it anymore. And she won't have to. And then maybe you can move on to the next habit that you want her to form.
In essence, this is just a advanced form of habit training.
So with all the things that we have been talking about here, I'm just going to do a few bullet points for you. Don't forget when forming a new habit to come with your partner with gentleness and kindness to form a new habit. If it's a habit that they're aware of that they want to form, still come to them with gentleness and kindness.
But be direct.
Yes, but be direct, absolutely. Then the second thing is make sure that you have a plan. Sit down and have that plan. What is the habit that you want to form? What are going to be the consequences for not following through with that habit? Number 3, give yourself time to implement that habit. If it's right away for some of you, go for it. If you need to take the weekend or finish out the rest of the week, if it's midweek when you come and talk about this, and start fresh at the beginning of the week, do whatever it is that you need to do to set yourself up for success. So if that's jumping right in, great. If that's waiting until a new week starts, that's what you need to do. 4th, make sure that you follow through with the consequences. When she fouls up, wherever that is, even if it's 100 days in a row and then there's a stumble, follow through with the consequences. But then make sure that you give a reward. Either have that structured into your plan when you first do that, or be spontaneous and give her a reward for her hard work. And there's no time constraint on that, but I would also say, head of households, when you're thinking about a reward, if it's spontaneous, don't do it too soon. But also don't wait too long, because then she will feel like her hard work is not being noticed. So make sure that you think about what would be a good time to give her a reward for that. And so that's what I'd like to bullet point it for you.
And lastly, forming new habits is something that is not going to be part of your routine on either side. And so if the take it in hand partner is putting in the effort to form this habit, as the head of household, you have to check in. And so if you are not the type of person that can kind of remember what you're currently checking in on and working on, this is why we use a habit tracker, and we put new things into the habit tracker so that it gives him a reminder to remember to check in on those things that have not become part of our routine yet. And so if you need to write it down, if you need to put it into a digital habit tracker, if you need to set an alarm on your phone, whatever you need to do to remember to check in, because that is the most important part, is you have to check in to know, is success happening that deserves some positive reinforcement? Or is there some failure that's happening that needs that negative consequence in order to support the overall success of this habit forming? And you talked about rewards, and I think what you said is really good as far as like, don't come in on day 2 or 3 with a reward, but don't wait too long. But don't forget that positive affirmation is a reward, and don't withhold that affirmation. Don't withhold that verbal affirmation, those good jobs, those, hey, you worked really hard today. Take some time to read tonight, or take some time to rest, or whatever it is. But you can find small little things daily, every other day, to reinforce without bringing some sort of elaborate reward home, or even a small thing home. So just do what makes sense in your relationship. But I guess we're just saying, like, don't be generous with verbal affirmation, be generous with encouragement, but also don't withhold consequences when they are necessary.
Absolutely. Well said. We hope you got a lot out of this podcast today. And of course, if you have any comments or questions, you can leave those below.
And if you want bonus content, don't forget our link to our Patreon is down below. We have some bonus content there as well as access to our Discord server. So you can find that all there.
Thanks for joining us.
Bye.